Welcome back to the Important Nonsense Podcast. 32 teams in 32 days. Cincinnati Bengals. We are on to Cincinnati. I'll never not make that joke. Every year we get further from it, less people understand it, but it's still funny to me. It's going to be nice to talk about a good team for a change, gentlemen. For the record, we are recording this on July 22nd. So if anything we say sounds dated, that would be why. Check back on the wrap-up show. We'll update any takes that need to be updated. Although for this, I don't think there's going to be too many updates. You pretty much know who your Bengals are going to be, but it's worth going through it and doing what we do, taking you through every team, getting you prepped for the 2023 fantasy football season. Jason, welcome back to the show. 3 shows in a row. I appreciate you sitting in with us. And Mike Burland with his perfect attendance record for 32 teams in 32 days continues in the background. Real quick, as always, our quick hitters with the notes here. This is all based on 12-team PPR, God's format. Redraft specific, we will always sprinkle in notes for other formats as we go, but that's what this is designed for. All the ADPs that you will hear come from Fantasy Pros. Shout out to Fantasy Pros. We are happy to be affiliated with you as always. And all the depth charts that we will be using come from Player Profiler. Shout out to Jack Kavanaugh. Jack, hope you're well wherever you are. With all of that cleared up, gentlemen, Joe Burrow. He's good. He's good. He's good at football.
Very good.
Yeah, he's all right, I guess. I think the passing attempts helps him a bit. Having that much volume to throw, I think that helps.
He's a chucker. He is definitely a chucker. They are not shy about, hey, man, if I had that wide receiver core, I'd chuck around too, man. Like, I'd just huck it up. What did you call it, Mike? YOLO balls? Other in one of the previous shows?
YOLO balls. Yeah,
YOLO balls? Yeah. Joe Burrow likes some YOLO balls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he has the receivers to do it, so why not?
Definitely works out for him.
He exudes confidence as well, which you have to love. I do enjoy listening to him speak and things like that. He's a little arrogant.
I believe the new word is he has the Riz.
He does have the Riz, as the kids say. As the kids say.
And serious trip.
As an aside, when I heard that for the first time, I had to look that up because I'm like, that doesn't mean what it used to mean anymore for anybody around 40. That means something very different to older people. The kids have co-opted that, and the first time I heard it, I'm like, "What'd you just say?"
Comes
That's
from charisma,
filthy.
Right? That's where it comes.
It's
from.
what it means
that's
now.
The new one. That's
what
the
it
new
means
one.
now. That isn't what that used to mean. That is not at all what that. I had to stop. I'm like, "What did you just say?" Like, that's filthy. Like, what did you just say? Like that. And then, but to the TikTok generation, that means charisma. I learned recently, as someone decidedly under 30 had to explain to me. I'm like, I stopped and I'm like horrified. Like, what did you just say? That doesn't mean what. Look that up, and then yeah, that's what that means these days.
Oh, what was I was coaching, and I think one of the kids called a Discord kitten. I'm like, what the heck is this nonsense?
It's a new one for me, man.
Yeah, it's a whole nother barrel of what is going on in this weird world. But
kids take all the slang for themselves. That's how it works, man. We got to keep up. Joe Burrow, we cover. I mean, what is there to say? He's talented. He can throw very well. Here's the problem. Ranked as the QB5, translates to 53 overall. His ADP, I can't even sugarcoat this. His ADP is 32. 3rd round. I can't do it. I can't. It flies in the face of everything I believe as it relates to drafting and running a team.
But you know why it happened. I mean, everybody got so worried about it from last year and how much having a top-end quarterback affected their team. And or not having one.
Such a limited sample size.
And I know, but that is what's happening in this cruel world that we live in.
Look, guys, I'm telling you right now, I can't. I won't justify Joe Burrow in the 3rd round. Also, because there's one. Jason, I hear what you're saying. I don't agree, but I understand why you're saying it, and you are correct. That is what's happening in the macro environment. You are right. I disagree with all of it, But I especially disagree with Joe Burrow because Joe Burrow doesn't have the rushing floor to justify it. In order for him to return value on that, you're talking about he would have to throw for close to 5,000 yards and like close to the touchdown record in order to justify that. He would need to have that Aaron Rodgers MVP season. Could he do it? Sure. Theoretically. I mean, he has the weapons, he has the innate talent, good team. He could do it. I'm not counting on that though. So I'm not going to be rostering Joe Burrow in anything that isn't like a dynasty league where I already had him. I can't justify this. I'm going to be all out on it. I'm going to let other people fight over the Joe Burrow thing in the third round while I take a running back or a wide receiver and wait on quarterback. That's going to be my continued strategy with this. Are either of you interested in Joe Burrow at sticker price?
Nope.
Not happening.
I mentioned it last video, but look at the Justin Herbert year last year, kind of the same thing. I think he was being drafted in the third round, and because of you don't have that rushing floor, if you have a down year and touchdown wise, which Herbert did with 25, you are probably going to lose in your fantasy league because you took him in the third round. So don't draft these guys in the third round.
We have to bring it up though. Stop. When you're mentioning Herbert, he also had a rib injury and
I understand.
a broken hand and none of his wide receivers. So it's going to be different this year.
I'm going to let you get that out as the resident Chargers fan. I'm going to let you do that. Well,
me and Mike do this. That's why I brought it up.
Oh, no, I forgot. I completely forgot I'm working with two Chargers fans. In fact, that's going to be the show today, guys. And in fact, we will not do any subsequent shows. I'm moving. I'm moving to the sea. But yes, just generally speaking with Joe Burrow, this is insanity. I get the inflation. I get why people are doing it. This is a classic blunder to me, is getting way too invested in quarterback in the third round and not, if anything goes wrong, to your point, Mike, I think you could really lose your league with this decision. You could legitimately make a decision that you can't recover from. It's really, as they say, you can't win your fantasy league in the first 3 rounds, but you could absolutely lose it. This to me feels like one of those decisions where paying sticker price for Joe Burrow right now is just too much for what you could theoretically get. That being said, he is extremely talented. He is very good, as we've covered, and he will easily prop up all the weapons around him and make them all matter. But I can't justify going with Joe Burrow for this. I'd be much happier if he was going about 3 rounds later, which is where I think he should be going. But that's not going to happen this year. So my advice would be it's not like our general advice is let your league mates fight over Joe Burrow, and we'll get into maybe who you should be taking in the third round as opposed to actually going for Burrow. There's somebody on this team that if I had my druthers, I'd be looking at him in the third round rather than Burrow himself. But we'll get to that. That's called a tease, ladies and gentlemen. It's a professional radio operation we have going on around here.
It hurt my brain. Don't do that again.
Something that is more attractive that might be worth what you're being asked to pay is in the running back room. Joe Mixon, still with the Bengals. Nobody's happy about it. I don't think Joe Mixon's happy about it. I don't think the Bengals are happy about it. I'm sure Joe Mixon's agent's not happy about it. But Mixon did something very, very smart about a week ago, and he actually took a pay cut to stay with the Bengals. This is a very intelligent decision from where I'm sitting.
Unpopular,
but given the state of running back in 2023 in the real football world, where these guys are having real major contract issues and are being just systematically underpaid, it is what it is. We don't control that. The league sets itself its own weird free market economy. They don't want to pay running back. Well, if Mixon was to hit the open market, I think he would be bitterly disappointed with what his options were going to be, and he was going to make less money than even the haircut he took to stay. This is a good idea. Stay on a good team, try to put out some tape, and try to get another contract in the future, because this is probably the last ride with Joe Burrow on the Bengals. However, there is some optimism. His main competition, Samaje Perine, now in Denver, there's nobody behind Joe Mixon. Travion Williams and Chris Evans do not matter. They don't even matter as handcuffs. They matter for real football purposes, Jason, but
Okay.
this is a fantasy football show. They are not fantasy
fair.
relevant. They're not even handcuffs. There's no handcuff to Mixon at this point. It's just Mixon. He's the only running back in the room that matters at any level. Ranked as the RB13, going at 27 overall. However, because of the hate and because of all the noise, ADP 39. I like that. 4th round for Joe
Definitely
Mixon.
an anchor. Definitely an anchor RB right here. If you're doing that method.
4th round for a guy who has been a top 12 running back at multiple points in his career. Boy, sign me up for this. I love this. On a good team, he's going to get all the red zone work. No threat to his job. Playing for a new contract elsewhere. Oh, man. Put it in my veins. Like, I'm going to have so many Joe Mixon shares. Guys, Jason, do you share my optimism on Joe Mixon?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's just the fact that Samaje isn't there. It's a huge drop off, and he's going to see all the work. I mean, he did it last year, and they didn't really bring anything in. Everything has stayed pretty much exactly the same. So, and the opportunity's there. This is a good offense. They should still be able to move the ball, and they like throwing those dump offs, and that also adds to his value. So it's just the wide open space that he's going to have in front of him when he's playing football is just going to be crazy.
Yeah, not going to be a lot of stacked boxes given the wide receivers and how the team likes to go. So you like that too. Mike, optimistic about Joe Mixon?
Yeah, definitely. I will say though, he wasn't facing stacked boxes last year, and we wish he was a little bit more efficient. You would think the number one running back on the Bengals would be more efficient. He had that huge like 50-point game last year, which kind of inflated it. But I do think the Bengals offensive line was really bad, and I think it has improved. So that's going to help Joe Mixon. Like you said, there's really no one behind him. They did draft Chase Brown in the 5th round that I think is probably going to be the backup if I had to guess, but he's not really going to matter unless Mixon gets hurt. It's all Mixon. He should get a bunch of carries. He caught 60 passes last year in 14 games. What's not to love about Joe Mixon on one of the best offenses in the league? I mean, I think his ADP it's reflected a little bit of, people weren't sure he's going to be back on the Bengals. And so if I could get him in the 5th round or 4th round, I love it. I think you might have to take him maybe in the 3rd if you want him, but
I would still be willing to do that.
Yeah,
I would much rather take Joe Mixon in the 3rd than Joe Burrow.
Oh, 100%.
So, and Mike, that was beautifully put. You would like more efficiency. His efficiency was in the toilet last year. But what's going to make up for that this year more than likely is he's not sharing that job. So even if it's hideously inefficient, you're correct. He's going to get all the receptions, all the rushing work. When you get it all, you can kind of wallpaper over the fact that his efficiency was really crappy last year.
Yeah. And
opportunities.
I think that in the Bengals, it's telling, like people talk about, oh, they love Samaje Perine. Why didn't they offer him? I think he signed like $1 million contract, like 1 year.
It was a little more than that. But yes, it wasn't a lot of money.
It's like, well, why didn't they bring him back if they knew they were going to go through this Mixon stuff too? It's like I think they like Mixon more than we think, more than the general public thinks. So I'm totally in on Mixon.
Well, and as one of the teams that has an over of 11.5 wins, there's 3 of them, so that definitely helps you as an offense. Having the players on those teams are going to be very beneficial for your fantasy season.
Yeah, well, there's not much, like similar to Joe Burrow. There isn't that much to say. Like it's the only difference is that this Joe, I am willing to take in the 3rd round, and I'm recommending that other people do so if you can get him in the 4th. It's right in the sweet spot. It's right in the butter zone. I'd be thrilled if he was my RB2. You know what I mean? Like if I could get a top end running back and Joe Mixon, I feel I'm in a great spot at that point. Especially if I could get him in the 4th and I could have wide receivers already in the mix too that I'm taking. Oh man, I love the way my team is shaping up. So no, it's very nice to be able to get a discount on something that has as much upside as Joe Mixon. I do not feel like taking him in the 3rd round would actually be drafting him at his ceiling. Whereas Joe Burrow, I absolutely do. Let's talk about wide receiver. And continuing the theme of he good. Jamar Chase. He good. He good. For my money, probably the second best wide receiver in football right now. It's maybe third. It's debatable, right? You could talk about how you want to slot in certain guys. CeeDee Lamb, would like to talk about it. Justin Jefferson's probably the de facto number one choice at this point.
Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, Cooper Kupp, depending on how you feel about it. But Jamar Chase is in that class. He's on the page. To wit, he is currently ranked as the wide receiver 2. Translates to about 12 overall in the ECR. His ADP 3. Not wide receiver 3. 3. So if you want Jamar Chase, you got to have top 3 pick. Do I need to explain why?
Nope.
I get it. I mean, but of the wide receiver room, that's not the one that I'm chasing.
We could get into that in a second here, but let's talk about let's Mike. What do you think about Jamar Chase? Are you willing to put up a top 3 pick on Jamar Chase? I think I know where Jason's going with that, which is probably no. But what do you think?
No, I am. To me, it's Jefferson, McCaffrey, Kupp, Chase. Those are like that tier to me. And if you want to take, I'm even fine if you truly believe in Jamar Chase. I wouldn't, but if you want to take him number 1 overall, I'm not going to sit here and argue with you.
If you were willing to take him at 3 and you told me you want to take him at 1, what's the difference? Like,
there's no argument. I would still take Justin Jefferson and probably Cooper Kupp, but people talk about Justin Jefferson. Look at the year he had last year. He went into his 3rd year. Jamar Chase going into his 3rd year. I mean, the guy was, missed 5 games and put up 9 touchdowns, almost 90 catches, almost 1,100 yards, missing 5 games. I'm not going to argue. The guy deserves to be in that top tier of, especially, PPR leagues is what we're talking about.
Yeah, 100%. Okay. I won't roster Jamar Chase very often, given his current ADP, because if I'm old, and if I'm taking a 3rd round, if I've got a top 3 pick, I'm probably going to end up with a running back, more than likely. I know this year there's a very popular strategy that's being bandied about fantasy circles, particularly on Twitter. Be careful what you read on Twitter. Some of those people are not your friends. There's a lot of hype around this is the year that you go wide receiver early as a general philosophy. I don't necessarily disagree. But if I had a top 3 pick, I would say there's a very high chance Justin Jefferson was available still. I'd probably end up with that if I was inclined to go wide receiver, but I'd probably still wind up with a running back more than likely. That's just typically how I roll.
Real quick. I think a lot of people are doing that strategy just because we just talked about it. Like, you can get Mixon potentially in the 4th round.
Yes.
We talked about like James Conner in like the 6th round. Like, the running backs are getting pushed down. So maybe that's why the value is I get one of these anchor receivers and then get the value.
That definitively is the reason why, Mike. That's this whole process here is you want to focus on like your Cooper Kupps, your Chases, your Justin Jeffersons early. And so it pushes the whole running back market down. My counter to that is I can still get good wide receivers later. So I'd rather corner the market on running back, because the running back cliff happens a lot faster than the wide receiver cliff.
Definitely.
And then that's also why I can't justify taking a quarterback early, because I need to make sure that I get my good running backs, because if I wait until even the 7th round, I'm screwed. Like, they're getting pushed down, but they're not getting pushed down to a point yet where I would be really happy with it as an old fogey who still believes that you need to have quality running backs to succeed in fantasy, because we see that every year. Suck it, 0 RB people. Cry harder about it.
Not a thing.
It's still a thing.
It's not a thing.
It shouldn't be a thing. People keep talking about it like it's a thing. So I have to dunk on them a little bit as we continue on here. But I to your point, Mike, I would not be like, whoa, what are you doing? If I saw somebody take Jamar Chase at 3 overall, I wouldn't even bet it. I'd be like, yeah. I mean, if that's what you believe, like, it's not shocking to me in any level if somebody was willing to do that. That's really kind of all he's good. He's an electric player. He's going to have the volume. I get the hype. It makes sense. It's not something I would personally do. What I would personally do is go all in on T. Higgins. Yeah! Every year we have this conversation, and every year I'm right. T. Higgins is a monster, because I cannot teach you to be 6'5" and to be 220 pounds and run a sub 4.5. Can't teach it. You can do that or you can't. And Joe Burrow has learned this very quickly. Let him run, huck the ball. Just huck it. and let T. Higgins just go up and high point the football for you. I love watching him do it. It's a miracle. The one knock on T. Higgins is that he has to share it with Jamar Chase now, which hurts. When they're both on the field, T. Higgins sometimes gets a little bit of variability thrown in there. But even when they do have to share, you got to stop Jamar Chase. So you can when they're both out there, T. Higgins does get the benefit of having lesser coverage. You can't put your second corner on T. Higgins. He's too tall. He's too fast. He's too athletic. That being said, when Chase is out there, Burrow does sometimes have a tendency to lock in on him, and T. Higgins doesn't always get fed the way you would like, but that's baked into his ADP at this point. I mentioned, Jason, there was a player that if I was going to spend a third-round pick on over Joe Burrow, this is it. We're here. It's T. Higgins, wide receiver, 14 by ranking, translates to 29 overall, ADP 31, one spot ahead of Joe Burrow's ADP. I will do that 11 times out of 10. I will take T. Higgins over Joe Burrow in the third round. I will 1,000. I cannot stress how much I believe in this. I've been a T. Higgins truther since he came into the league as a rookie. The man is a freak athlete. He's incredibly talented. If Jamar Chase wasn't on this team, he'd be their wide receiver 1. If he was on a different team, he'd be the wide receiver 1 for about 18 teams in the NFL. Probably more, to be perfectly honest with you. The man, I cannot say enough positive superlatives. I could gush about T. Higgins literally all day. The man is insane. Jason, we're gonna just turn this into the T. Higgins love fest. What do you like about T. Higgins? Why is it so attractive?
I mean, it's like you said, being tall, you can't. It's not something you can just learn. You can't do it. You can't get taller. You can. You won't be that good at it because when they do the surgeries and stuff, it's painful. You don't want to go through that. But it can happen.
God, I don't want to talk about that.
It's a painful surgery, but it's crazy that the fact that they have these two dynamic wide receivers on the same team that are it's unfair. And that's part of the reason that they win so much. And it's
why the Bengals are trying to prioritize re-signing T. Higgins long term. Because he's that important to what they do. He's a matchup nightmare. He's a coverage nightmare. I just can't say enough good things. Mike, you've been very polite. Very polite. While Jason and I do our little we kind of like I have a vernacular for this, but it's not PG and these are going on YouTube, so I'm just going to move on. Mike, what do you think about T. Higgins? Do you want to be the voice of reason or do you want to get in the bus?
No, I'm in the bus with you guys.
Get on the bus.
As it sounds like a bus driving past my window, but I'm totally in. The guy's really, really good at football, like you said. I mean, I think he was a top 15 receiver last year, and they had a game. They had a game that was voided. They played one less game than everyone else. Obviously people getting injured and stuff, but
he had 3 points in the voided game you're referring to, that Bills game that we will not discuss at length, and he still was in the top 15.
Yeah,
and he didn't play every game, by the way, either.
Yeah, he missed a couple games, and he has the upside of if Chase does get hurt. Just looking at when Chase was hurt, T. Higgins was averaging like 95 yards and 6-7 catches a game. So there's the upside of if Chase, this team's going to throw the ball over 600 times. Like there's plenty of room for another receiver besides Jamar Chase, and you're getting them, cheaper, like you said, a couple rounds cheaper. So yep. I agree with you guys. Not much else to say, really.
The only one wart is that when Jamar Chase is out there, occasionally T. Higgins doesn't get fed the way that he should. It's the one wart. If that's my biggest complaint, that's not a complaint. Like, oh no, he didn't get 12 targets because the third best wide receiver in football is also on his team. Like, it's one of those deals. I'm all in on T. Higgins as I continue to be. And will continue to be for years to come. I think I just cannot say enough good things. I cannot stress enough how important it is. I think to take him in the third round over Joe Burrow. I think you will be infinitely happier with that decision at the end of the year with your playoff spot, as opposed to probably your non-playoff spot if you go quarterback in the third round like that. Especially if you do end up going Burrow. The only other wide receiver of note here really is Tyler Boyd.
It's an important note. This is a very important note because if Higgins or Chase is out, Boyd becomes extremely valuable.
Well, okay. Do you want to?
It has proven that he can do.
Then just go ahead. Talk about Tyler Boyd, Jason. Talk about Tyler Boyd.
I mean, we just did. That's the fact. If either of them are injured, he becomes an immediate wide receiver 2. It's not an issue. He steps into the role. He plays it well, and he's shown that he can easily surpass any coverage that they're throwing out against him because he is now getting that second corner, and he just does it every year. It's annoying as crap because every year they do the same thing, and it's like, why isn't that not going to Chase? Why isn't that going to Higgins? Why is it going to Boyd? Why is they still throwing to him even though both these players are on the field? And it's extremely frustrating to watch because as a fantasy manager, you're like, well, that should be going to my player. Why not me?
Correct vernacular.
I got you.
It is 2023. I still have to correct people on this on other platforms. Okay, Mike, he said wide receiver 2 at one point in that, and I saw you visibly wince. So go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just looking at what short sample size, but Tyler Boyd, when Chase was out in the 4 games, had 12 catches for 140 yards and a touchdown. So they didn't really use him as a wide receiver 2. And, you know, he has the boom weeks every now and then, but I don't know. There's just really not a lot of upside, in my opinion. Even if one of those guys, if they're out for the whole season, maybe, but if they miss a few games, like, there's no guarantee, like, okay, now Tyler Boyd's going to get 90 yards and 7 catches, in my opinion. So,
yeah. See, I'm closer to you, Mike, on this. We as a website have a reputation of being the Tyler Boyd hater place. That is earned for a reason, but it's less accurate over time because that was all baked into back when people were trying to draft Tyler Boyd as like a real weapon in like the 5th, 6th round. That doesn't happen anymore because wide receiver 56, 140 overall by rank, ADP 139. So the public is largely in line with that. By that point, I mean, what is that? You're talking about like the
super cheap
12th, 13th round. That's fine. I have no issue with that if you want to take Tyler Boyd in the 12th, 13th round. Jason, I agree by and large with what you said, except for the wide receiver 2 thing. I think he'd be a wide receiver, a reliable wide receiver 3 or a flex option for you if somebody was hurt. I don't think he could crack wide receiver 2, largely because I think they would change philosophies a little bit. If one of those 2 guys was actually hurt, they would try to run the ball more. They might fail. Right, they did that in the past. They might fail at it because their O-line is still bad. Even though they've tried to Band-Aid it, they might fail. So I do get some optimism. The reason why I'll just say this. At that ADP, I'm fine with it. Tyler Boyd's going to have his same job. He's going to play slot. He's going to play the slot. He's not sharing that job. It's not exactly apples to oranges, but he's not having Hayden Hurst cut into him in the slot anymore. We'll get into that here just in a moment. With tight end as we wrap up. But if you're talking about 12th round, 13th round, even 11th round, and you want to go Tyler Boyd as like your 4th, 5th wide receiver, really? Sure. Because there is some limited upside there where if something was to happen to one of the 2 really desirable wide receivers, he could have some value at this point. And as a benefit, there's really nobody behind Tyler Boyd at this point anymore. They have Trent Irwin and Trent Taylor, which I'm only bringing up because you should know who those people are. You will see them, by the way, in the preseason. If you watch the preseason, I can guarantee you will see Trent Irwin and Trent Taylor. They like Trent Irwin a lot. If anybody was a threat to Tyler Boyd, weirdly, it's Trenton Irwin because he would do the same job.
25% touchdown percentage, I think, last year. 4 touchdowns on 15 catches.
Right. Yeah. Stupid. It's stupid. But they like Trent Irwin. There's a reason he's still there. He might actually matter at some point in the future, maybe theoretically. But just know who they are. In a world of a million injuries, those guys might matter at some level. It's the two Trents. Trent and Trenton. Feels like I'm in Nantucket. Like they need a Tucker to really round out the whole thing. But yeah, they have a Tyler. Like they have all of it. They have all of it. But yeah, Tyler Boyd at his current ADP, I have no problem with because you're not drafting him at his ceiling at that point. To Jason's kind of point, I just disagree with what you think the ceiling is versus what I and Mike I think the ceiling is 2 different things. But the general logic is the same. At his current ADP, No issue with this. It's when people want to talk about Tyler Boyd, top 6th-round draft pick. No, absolutely not. That's a recipe for disaster. That's a recipe for failure. We're just going to round it out with tight end. We mentioned Hayden Hurst, no longer there. Had a lot of success with them last year. I was actually somewhat surprised. They didn't want to bring him back. And then I saw what he got paid on the open market. And I'm like, oh, the Bengals don't have that kind of money. The Bengals cannot afford this. So, and the Bengals largely have made hay with this, whether it's CJ Uzomah, Hayden Hurst, now Irv Smith. This is what they do. They go out and find a inexpensive tight end who can catch to work the middle of the field for them. This year, it's Irv Smith's turn. Theoretically, back from injury. We've seen Irv Smith have success in the league in the past. He's just been beat up the last couple of years. He's supposed to be healthy now. This is the best opportunity Irv Smith has had in a long time to be on a good team, to really do something. And well rested. When he's healthy, we've seen him have success. He can catch. Not much of a blocker.
Well, that's why they brought in Devin.
Right. Well, they still have Drew Sample to do the dirty work, blocking. Because Drew Sample ain't catching nothing. We've seen that. He ain't catching nothing. What is that line? I bet if that puck was a cheeseburger, you'd stop it. That's how I feel about Drew Sample. If that football was a cheeseburger, you might catch it, but he's there to block. Irv Smith will do all the catching work. Jason, thank you for laughing at my 30-year-old Mighty Ducks references. The Irv Smith, tight end, 21, rank would translate to about 182 overall, ADP 155. Got no issue with this. He's in that dart throw tight end class that I love. The double tap, as it were. If I can't get Cole Kmet or Greg Dulcich or one of those guys that I like a little bit more, I'm totally fine with waiting to get Irv Smith super late in my draft because you've invested virtually nothing. If he flames out, cut him, pick somebody else off the waiver wire, and just keep the churn going. He's on a good team, and he'll have some opportunities. Burrow historically needs a tight end that can work the middle of the field that he's confident in. So I'm fine with it. Does anybody have anything that they want to – does anybody disagree with any of that? Got any issue with Irv Smith? Want him higher?
No, I actually have him lower, but that's fine.
Lower? Okay.
Yeah,
I just see a lot more upside for the other tight end, so that makes it pretty easy for me.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I was going to say he's probably going to do the Uzomah, Hayden Hurst, 50 catch, 500-yard season. Not a lot of upside. I mean, there is that chance you get that spike touchdown-heavy season that you get in tight ends every now and then because he's on the Bengals, but
one game.
I'm fine with
that one game where he gets 3 touchdowns and ruins everybody else's week, and I'm furious as the guy who's rostering T. Higgins. And yeah, no, I get that. I can see that happening. That's the thing with these good teams, man. The shows are typically shorter. There's a lot less to argue about, especially this team as we move to wrap up here. This team I feel like is very cut and dry. It's defined. It's one of the easiest teams you'll do. You know what it is. You know what you want. Just as a summary, Joe Burrow, not at his current ADP. Hunter, hard pass. Not doing that. Even if I was willing to take a quarterback in the 3rd round, it certainly wouldn't be Joe Burrow in the 3rd round. Give me one of those guys with a rushing floor. Mixon is a value, but to your point from earlier, Mike, let's revisit this conversation in September and see where that ADP moves to now that the dust is settling. But if we were drafting today, give me all the Joe Mixon in the 4th round that I can get. Jamar Chase wouldn't bat an eye if you were willing to do it. Not for me personally, but wouldn't bat an eye at it. I wouldn't.
But T. Higgins.
T. Higgins, I will have all. Jason, you and I will battle for T. Higgins then in every redraft league because
there's a reason that we don't draft against each other in redraft. And
we do typically, but it's most of the leagues we play against each other in are a little weird because we were playing a lot of expert leagues. Tyler Boyd, totally fine with it at his current ADP. Irv Smith, totally fine with it at his current ADP, but I bet you could even wait in a lot of drafts. I bet you could even get a discount. So it's really simple, man. So final thoughts. Jason, take us home.
I guess who day? That's it. I mean, it's a good team. You get who you want from this team, and they're probably going to be a benefit to your fantasy squad. So that's all I need to say. I think that summarizes pretty well.
Mike, take us home, buddy.
Yep, I think it's the easiest team in terms of fantasy football to kind of predict. There's no muddy waters at any position, backups, anything. So on to the next team.
Well, speaking of the next team in the listening audience's world, tomorrow we will be sitting down to break down the Cleveland Browns. Oh, sorry. I meant to cut the mics before I did that. Anyway, until
There's
then,
fantasy value there.
There is. I just hate talking about the Browns. It's
the color. I get it.
It's the color. It's the quarterback. Who said
It
that?
should be the greens.
It's Cleveland. It's all of it. But we will see you tomorrow to subject you to our analysis of the Cleveland Browns. And until then, keep up the nonsense.
I'm Tim Kitzer from NBA Jam and NFL Blitz, and you can find all the guys at ImportantNonsense.com. Kaboom!